Welcome to the Fifth Estate, a conversation between young African scholars from the Fort Hall School of Government and Professor Mutahi Ngunyi. Today, we focus on opposition unity. We will argue that this unity is possible. However, it will depend on the method used to achieve it. Opposition unity through fraud will fail, but opposition unity through equity will change our country forever. The question we will ask, therefore, is this: which method shall be used to achieve this unity? Opposition unity through fraud or opposition unity through equity? Consider our reflections with us. We borrow from history, statistics, and political practice.
Let us begin with opposition unity through fraud. Political frauds are difficult to discern. They are clothed to look like change. And nothing fits this description better than NASA. This project is carefully engineered to confuse opposition harmony. But at the core, the engineering of Project NASA is amateurish, especially if you compare it to the cleverness of Raila. In our view, Raila is the opposition candidate. End of discussion. Catwalks by Mudavadi and the Court sisters are just a waste of time. Raila intends to delay the nomination of a joint opposition candidate until it is too late. And at this crisis point, the original Court sisters and their new sister Mudavadi will have no option but to back Raila. If they abandon him in this late hour, they will be called traitors. The idea will be to dominate the sisters into supporting Raila at zero option. And this is the main fraud.
Now we must address the bearded sisters of CORD plus Sister Mudavadi of NASA. We must tell them that Raila is like the flower known as the Venus flytrap. This flower eats animals, mainly insects and small juicy frogs. The leaves of this flower look like a mouth with many sharp teeth. Inside is a bright red color, and around the mouth is a spray of irresistible sweet nectar. This is what attracts the insects and juicy frogs. When they land on this mouth, the jaws of the plant snap shut with speed. In fact, they close faster than we can blink. And the more the trapped insects struggle to get out, the faster they are digested by this plant. The message to the bearded sisters of CORD and Sister Mudavadi is therefore this: Raila is trapping you with color red and nectar. Before you blink, he will snap his jaws like this flower, and the more you struggle to get out by claiming that opposition nominations were rigged, the faster you will be digested. On opposition through fraud, therefore, Raila wins.
Raila thrives in political deceit and trickery. And in politics, this is just fine so long as people can't figure you out. Unfortunately, Raila has repeated his tricks for far too many times, and now they are written all over his face. What he wants to do this time around is to delay the nomination of a joint opposition candidate until it is too late. Then in the heat of crisis, he will dominate the bearded sisters of CORD into anointing him the opposition candidate. It will be too late for them to abandon him, and he will be too strong for them to defeat him. And this is how he becomes the opposition candidate at zero option. Now, this trick would have been clever if it was not obvious. But in the meantime, the Court sisters should be reminded that a Raila candidacy has a historical record of persistent failure. To be dominated into this candidacy through fraud is therefore to succumb to a state of guaranteed failure, in my view. And history is our national witness on this matter 3 times.
If Raila wins through fraud, can he also win if opposition unity is achieved through equity? That is, if everyone puts their vote value on the table, can he win the opposition ticket? In our view, whether opposition unity is achieved through fraud or equity, Raila still emerges on top. This is why the bearded sisters of CORD and Sister Mudavadi should forget the opposition ticket. They will not get it End of discussion. Let us now consider what this means for the bearded sisters. A Raila opposition ticket means that if he wins the election, they will have to wait until 2027. In the 2027 election, the bearded sisters will all be in their 70s, except Sister Mudavadi, who will be in his 60s. Similarly, Uhuru will have done only one term. He will be entitled to a second term. And of course, there will be candidate Ruto. In sum, if Raila gets the opposition ticket and wins, the presidential ambitions of the bearded sisters are over. Or did I miss something here?
If opposition is on the horns of dilemma, what is the alternative? In our view, opposition unity is a disaster if achieved thoughtlessly. That is, if the unity is anti-hegemonic as opposed to counter-hegemonic, it will fail. If it is anti-Uhuru and not counter-Uhuru, it will collapse flat on the face. To be effective, therefore, opposition unity cannot be obvious. It must be calculated, devious, and conniving. It must be a soap opera. For starters, the bearded sisters must abandon Raila. That is drama. Then they must go for the first round of this election without him. Let him seethe with anger and jealousy. This will be more drama. And through this dramatic strategy, they will force a runoff. Then the runoff will be the dramatic effect that will bring them back together. With a runoff, they will settle on an opposition candidate, chosen competitively through the first round of the election. But more fundamentally, they will force opposition unity at the runoff stage.
In my view, Raila is condemned to the myth of Sisyphus. And I've said that before. In this myth, Sisyphus annoyed the gods and was punished to roll a heavy rock up a hill all day. And just before it settled at the peak, the heavy rock would snap and roll back down. But the gods required Sisyphus to go back to work and roll the stone up again. Then it would snap and roll back down. And this is a curse of Raila Odinga and his search for the presidency. In 2002, he rolled up the heavy rock and made Kibaki president out of the sweat of his brow. Then the rock rolled back to the ground when he was fired by Kibaki in 2005. In 2007, he rolled up the rock and almost got the presidency. Then the gods took it away from him, rolled back the rock, and gave him nusu mkate instead. In 2013, the presidency was definitely his. As prime minister, he had rolled up the rock to the peak of power, but the gods rejected him and rolled the rock back to the ground. Now, for the last 4 years, Raila has rolled the rock up the hill every single day with expectation. Now the rock is almost at the peak of power. But if the gods have rejected him 3 times and rolled the rock back, why should they change their minds this time round? Why should they lift the Raila curse in 2017? This is why we want to invite the bearded sisters of God to entertain the thought that Raila is probably jinxed. But we could also be wrong.
And now, a final message to the bearded sisters of God and Sister Mudavadi. Raila suffers from the Jonah complex. Jonah was a prophet sent on a mission by God to Nineveh, but he decided to go on a different mission. On his way, in the opposite direction, the ship carrying him hit turbulence. To stabilize it, the sailors threw everything they had into the sea, but the turbulence would not stop. Then they discovered that the problem was this man called Jonah. To save themselves, they lifted the man and threw him and his belongings into the waters. To their surprise, the storm calmed down and the sun shone like a normal day. Through the turbulence, they discovered Jonah was a problem. The question to the bearded sisters of God and Sister Mudavadi is therefore this: Is Raila the Jonah in the opposition? Is he the reason why the opposition has failed 3 times? If you throw him into the waters, will this reduce opposition turbulence and give hope to the opposition?